If they want a criminal, I'm going to show them the best damn criminal there is. And that's what I did.
Each year, thousands of people facing trial or incarceration in the United States will flee. Some simply across state borders. Others will head for safe havens in other countries they may have family ties to, or that have no extradition treaty with the United States. However, for those wanting an easier-to-reach country to hide, they'll head north for Canada, or try their luck in the warmer climates of Central and South America, hoping to disappear among the crowds and live out their days on white sandy beaches. And that's exactly what the man, known as Wild Bill, would do.
I'm 43 years old. I was Central America's most celebrated and sought-after assassin, hitman, professional killer from 2006 until 2010. I was arrested in 2010. I'm serving 46 years for quintuple homicide inside the most dangerous prison in the Western Hemisphere. In that prison, I'm also the prison's chaplain. I've been here for 13 years in prison. I'm recording this from inside a super maximum security cell block in La Nueva Joya prison in Panama.
My name's Jack Lawrence. Welcome to Wanted.
I'm a wanderer of the soul. Before the end, I plan to be whole. But I know I'll lose myself along the way. What's gone is gone. What's past is past. Let me leave what belongs in the past.
So it was after chatting with Chad Hauer that I began to do some more research in the world of wanted people, looking up stories of men and women who have been on the run from authorities. And it was while reading through these different stories that I came across William Dathan Holbert, or Wild Bill. Now, unlike Chad, Wild Bill is a man who's guilty of some very serious crimes.
They were America's most wanted fugitives, that is until Monday. A couple who lived in Asheville is being detained in Nicaragua, accused in a string of killings in 3 different countries.
They're also facing a laundry list of charges in the U.S., from stolen cars to a high-speed chase and fraud.
Sifting through articles with headlines such as American accused of Panama serial killings, Catching Wild Bill, the end of a killing spree, and an incarcerated hitman's life behind bars. It all painted a pretty dark picture of a man who is now supposedly a prison chaplain.
Authorities believe this wild-haired man is a chameleon of sorts, changing his look and name in every new city. Authorities have dubbed him Wild Bill, but for the first time in years, they have him right where they want him, in handcuffs.
Talking to people incarcerated for murder is nothing new for me. With the show 1 minute remaining, I've spoken to multiple men and women who have been convicted of the crime. However, this one was different, as everyone I've spoken to so far has denied any wrongdoing, whereas Bill fully admits to his crimes.
A man has now confessed to the murder of a St. Petersburg woman in Panama. Panamanian authorities now say William Hobart admitted to killing her and at least 4 other people.
The other major difference with this story compared to the incarcerated men and women that I speak with was the location. Over my time interviewing incarcerated men and women in the United States, I've become pretty good at tracking them down and getting in touch with them. However, Bill is incarcerated in Panama. How on earth do I reach someone in a Panamanian prison? Well, their Facebook page, of course. Okay, so after doing a little bit of digging around and some investigation, Wild Bill has a Facebook page. Of course, as you do. Okay, well, let's click on it and see what we've got here. It's called Friends of Brother Bill. Let's see if we can get accepted into the group. So we've been accepted into the group, so now all that remains for me to do is send a message to this Facebook group and see who responds. It wasn't long till I got a response from the man himself. Okay, so I have a message. Hey bro, it's me, Bill. Tell me about your show. Sounds awesome. Looking forward to speaking with you. Oh, it looks like we're on. But just how do we arrange that, I wondered. Well, using his mobile phone, of course. Here he is.
Hey man, what's up, brother? How you doing, Jack?
Mate, I'm very well, my friend. I'm very well. So the first time Bill and I caught up, as I'm sure you can imagine, the signal from inside a Panamanian prison wasn't the best. Was there any, violence involved? Obviously, you're involved with some pretty heavy people and that sort of stuff. Did you ever find yourself in a situation that got a bit out of control?
I'm losing you.
You were dealing with these mafia types and all the rest of it, and it's a very dangerous world to be involved in. So was there any times in that period... Oh. So how do we fix that, I thought? Well, WhatsApp messaging, of course. So, with the help of modern technology from inside a jail cell in a third world country, this is the story of the man they call Wild Bill. Now, you might be thinking, a man known as Wild Bill, having been arrested for quintuple homicide and working as a hitman, must have had something traumatic happen to him in his early years. I mean, that's the normal MO, right? For someone who'd go on to commit these types of crimes. However, Bill says that couldn't be further from the truth.
So I grew up in the mountains of western North Carolina in a very rural environment, very good, wholesome, country, Christian environment. I had a really normal upbringing. A lot of people want to talk about how killers burn frogs and, torture dogs. I never did any of that stuff, and I grew up a really normal existence as a kid. And just like every other, redneck kid from western North Carolina, I grew up hunting and fishing. And I remember my father teaching me how to drive a car when I was 10 years old. I could drive a tractor and plow a field when I was 11 and was expected to do so. By the time I was 13 or 14, I was managing hundreds of stands of bees. That was my job on the farm, was managing the bees. And so I was a beekeeper. And so I grew up a very rural existence. I grew up very, very athletic. I played American football through the shot put and discus and track just to have something to do in the off season. Really cookie cutter American life. Studied agriculture at a place called Blue Ridge Community College, which in those days was called Blue Ridge Technical Institute. And we called it Redneck Tech because pretty much everybody that went there was just looking for a trade or something. So I pulled down an associate's degree in agriculture from Redneck Tech there in western North Carolina in a little town called Hendersonville.
So Bill was living the all-American life, doing the normal things most young kids his age were doing. However, he does admit that even from a young age, he had a, shall we say, entrepreneurial spirit.
At 16, I learned how to make these little black boxes that beat the cable. Everything was cable back in those days, and we made little analog black boxes that would give you pay-per-view and HBO and all the other channels for free. I made them in the basement of my grandfather's house and would sell them for $200 a piece, which was a considerable amount of money in 1995. And I was always doing something. Always involved in some sort of certainly illegal, but right on the edge of being illegal, but also socially acceptable. I sold stolen equipment. I didn't steal it myself, but I sold stolen equipment. I did all kinds of stuff,
So Bill had his scams running here and there, which would continue into his college years when he branched out into forging documents.
So I remember when I was in college, I dated this chick that was a librarian, and she had access to this machine that made like library cards, and I reset it up to make actual North Carolina driver's licenses. So if you wanted to buy a fake ID, because you couldn't drink until you were 21, you could go to college when you were 18, but you couldn't drink, and all the college kids want to go party in the club, And so if you wanted to buy a fake ID, what you do is you bring me your driver's license, and I would scan it, and what I would do is just change the date, the birth date, until make you just a little bit older, and then make you a driver's license. Now, if a North Carolina state trooper pulls you over and you give him that fake driver's license, he's going to run that driver's license, and that driver's license is going to come back good. Because the only thing different on it is the birth date, and it's very unlikely that anybody's going to catch the birth date, So I mean, like I literally made fake driver's licenses that were real driver's licenses based on your actual ID. I would just bump back. For instance, I was born in 1979. I would just bump mine back until I was 21. I'll be like 77. And so, or 76, whatever it needed to be. And so these are actual, I made like really, really good replica copies and would sell them for $200 a piece as well.
It's fair to say Bill was no choir boy, and he says he did in fact almost get caught at one stage.
That sort of thing came natural to me, and I used to sell stolen heavy equipment, making a great deal of money back in those days. I almost got caught once doing that as well. Got some machines confiscated, and I had to do a really good play acting job for the SBI, the State Bureau of Investigation, that I didn't know they were stolen, that I had bought them. I was so afraid I was going to jail, but I got out of it, and I weaseled my way out of it because I had all these legitimate businesses running, and nobody would ever think that, Well, anyway, so I mean, like I say, being honest, I was always a bit of a bad guy, but just right there on the edge of it, not just on the edge of it, making money, but not doing anything terribly wrong.
So, illegal, yes. The early warning signs of a cartel hitman in the making? Possibly not. Bill would also start a family very early in life. And again, it all started out pretty well. He was making good money and supporting his little family.
Then I went to college and knocked up this chick and ended up getting married. I don't want to talk a whole lot about my family because I'm leaving my family, out of these things. And so we ended up getting married. And during that time I was married to my first wife, I opened several businesses. One, I had a landscaping business that was very successful, actually. It was a moneymaker. We did really well. I built a large luxurious house, a 5-bedroom house on the family farm in Saluda there, and moved my little family there. We had 3 kids, a wife. I was really young. I was only about 23 years old and had all that going. And then I partnered with another guy on a gym. And when I got divorced, everything kind of fell apart. I got divorced in 2004, and everything kind of fell apart.
Bill says he's often asked, what happened? What was the moment that made him snap? From doing a few dodgy deals and some fake IDs to becoming a wanted fugitive, escaping the US and becoming a hitman. Well, it all stems, he says, from his custody battle with his former wife.
When I went to court, the judge told my ex-wife that she had to give me the kids every 2 weeks, and they told me that I had to pay this enormous amount of money every month. I mean, enormous amount of money. It was like $3,000 a month. I didn't even make $3,000 a month back then. And my lawyer advised me, he said, don't pay it, because if you pay it, the judge, that shows that you can pay it. He said, send her what you think is just, and then we'll go back to court. So that's what I did. Then she didn't send me the children in response. She said, well, if you're not going to pay, I'm not going to give you the kids. And so when we went to court, the judge gave her a $20 fine of contempt for not sending me the children. And I was waiting on my $20 fine for contempt. And he said, and you get 2 weeks in jail. You're going to put me in prison for 2 weeks. Like, what? For contempt? For not? He's like, yeah, you didn't pay. I'm like, I didn't pay because I couldn't pay. And he says, I don't believe that, and so on and so forth. And so I got really angry and said some ugly things in the courtroom and told the judge what I actually thought. And my lawyer's like, shut up, And so my lawyer says to the judge, let him serve it on the weekends so he can work. And so the judge says, fine, 2 weeks in jail, but you got to serve it on the weekends. Shit, 2 weeks in jail, 14 days serving it on the weekends, that's a lot of weekends. It's like 2 months dragging it out. So we go outside, and I told my lawyer, his name was Bill Gardo, and I told Bill Gardo, I said, look here, man. I said, it's been nice knowing you. I'm leaving. And he said, what? I said, I'm leaving. I said these words, and I remember them, and it's like something really famous, in my life. And I said, if they want a criminal, I'm going to show them the best damn criminal there is. And that's what I did.
The world was about to see just how wild Bill could be as he embarks on a crime spree. In fact, it's a crime spree he still can't go into too much detail about.
some of the statute of limitations hasn't run out on it yet, and I want to avoid being prosecuted for it. But I amassed an enormous amount of money in the United States with plans of leaving the United States, exiting the United States, which I did. I had about $350,000 in cash, and I decided to go to Central America. And the reason I got hot as well. I was the police several times. I evaded the police, and I knew that it was just a matter of time. I couldn't make enough fake IDs. I couldn't make them fast enough to change identities, and I knew that I was really short for the world. It wasn't going to be long before the authorities caught up with me.
Things in America had now reached fever pitch. It was getting far too hot for Bill to stick around, and it was time to leave. Bill was wanted.
I'm a wanderer of the soul. Before the end, I plan to be whole. But I know I'll lose myself along the way. What's gone is gone. What's past is past. Let me leave what belongs in the past.
And so I had been on vacation with my mistress in 2003. I say mistress, that's not really an accurate word because I didn't ever start a relationship with this woman until I was separated from my ex-wife. I was actually separated from my ex-wife. I wasn't the dog that I am today. Back in those days, I was actually pretty, I was pretty loyal actually. And I began a relationship with a young woman who was my secretary at the gym. And she and I went off on a little rendezvous to Costa Rica for a weekend once. And it was only the first time I'd ever been out of the country. And I really enjoyed it. And so when I became a real full-time, 100% balls-to-the-wall criminal, she decided to come with me.
So Bill has a destination, but there's still the slight issue of just how to get there. I mean, if you're a wanted fugitive, you can't just pop down to your local travel agent, get a couple of tickets on a commercial flight, and head out at JFK or LAX.
And so I got out of the United States through Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I borrowed someone's sailboat and skipped across to the Bahamas. From the Bahamas, I stayed there for about a week, but I didn't really feel like the Bahamas was a safe place because it's so close to the United States, and there are like FBI offices in the Bahamas. And so I grabbed a plane to the Cayman Islands, and from the Cayman Islands, I took a private plane. I was in the Cayman Islands for about 3 days and realized that this is not the place for me because everything is so expensive. And so I'm carrying on my person $500,000 in cash. And this is before all that airline security shit that they have today, And so I chartered a private plane from the Cayman Islands to Cancun. And then from Cancun, I grabbed a taxi that took me to the border, and we crossed into Belize. From Belize, I went to El Salvador. From El Salvador to Costa Rica. And I thought that jumping around, bing, 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 jumping around would have been really too much for the authorities. And that proved to be the truth. It was too much for the authorities. They lost me. They couldn't find me. So I disappeared again into Costa Rica. And from there, I set up my new life.
Costa Rica. It borders the Caribbean Sea to the east and the Pacific Ocean to the west. With Nicaragua to the north and Panama to the south, this stunning Caribbean port welcomes over 1.5 million tourists each year, including cruise ship passengers who are whisked off to the jungle for fun adventures. However, it's a place where locals try to be home by dark, and police patrol with high-caliber guns in the face of soaring drug violence. In fact, Costa Rica last year logged a record 657 homicides. The bloodshed is being blamed on the drug business that runs rife in the country. And it wasn't long before Wild Bill would find himself right in the thick of the drug world in Costa Rica.
I lived in a place in Costa Rica that was probably one of certainly the happiest times of my life. I lived in this place called Arrecife. Arrecife was a little bar in a place called Puerto Viejo de Talamanca, which is in the Limon province of Costa Rica on the Caribbean Ocean. It was an international community because Puerto Viejo de Talamanca had exploded as a surfing place. So all these hippie surfers came from all over the world, not just the United States. They came from England and Germany and Italy, and it was an international community that was popping. I mean, there were more foreigners in the town than there were actually locals. So in that place, I lived with these Italian boys in a place called Arrecife. At Arrecife, many things happened. There were three fellows, Mario, Lalo, and Pietro. Lalo was this big guy. He was about the same size as I was, and he was kind of fat because he was the cook, and he cooked so good. He really did cook good. And then Mario ran the operation, and Pietro was the bartender. Arrecife, which means in Italian and Spanish, the reef, like a coral reef, was right on this big coral reef on the beach, right on the beach, and there was an open-air restaurant. And I would go in the evenings to there and eat every night, and these Italians adopted me. And this is how it happened. One day, I went there every day for about 3 weeks, and I got to know them very well, and I ran a tab. I asked them to run me a tab, and I would just pay them every week instead of having to bring cash there every time because I was spending so much money there. Well, one day, I was sitting there eating with my girlfriend, and I looked up, and Mario was pushed over in the corner by these three dark-skinned fellows who were screaming at him, and one was waving a pistol around. Now, I had worked my whole life in things like bouncing. I was a bouncer at a bar. I was a repo man. I used to repossess cars. So like physical violence is not something that even remotely bothers me at all or scares me. It's something very natural for me. And I noticed these three men were pushing Mario, my good friend, who's been so good to me, around into the corner. And so I watched this for a moment, and I watched the one man had a pistol, and he would wave it wildly in the air, and you could tell he didn't know what the hell he was doing with the pistol. And so I walked over in that direction, and Mario looks at me, and he shakes his head, no, like, don't come over here, don't come over here. And I just continued to walk, and the other fellows, who turned out to be Colombians, looked at me thinking that I was like a stupid tourist, which I was a stupid tourist, but they didn't understand what I had in mind. And so I said, and in Spanish, ¿Dónde está el baño? But I said it like really poorly because I spoke poor Spanish. Where is the bathroom? And the Colombian says to me, hey, get the fuck out of here, go on, shoo, gringo. And so I smiled and continued to walk, and he said, didn't you hear me? And I hit him as hard as I could hit anybody I've ever hit anybody in my whole life. I mean, I hit him as hard as a human being can be hit in the face. I hit him square in the nose, facing, and with the same instant, just snatched the pistol right out of his hand because he had it kind of down by his side. I just reached and snatched the pistol out of his hand and chambered around. Ching, ching. It was a little black, rusty-ass 9mm pistol. The other three Colombian boys' eyes got really big. And so the guy laying on the ground starts screaming. He says, I'm going to kill you, gringo, blah, 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 blah. And so I just shot him in the kneecap. Plow! I gave him one through the knee. And then he screamed bloody murder, and he's like rocking back and forth on the ground. And I told the other two boys, I said, scoop his ass up and get him the fuck out of here. So that's what they did. They scooped him up and they threw him back in this little pickup truck and drove away. And Mario's looking at me very, very nervously, holding that pistol. And I ejected the magazine from the pistol, unchambered the round that was in it, and handed Mario the pistol stock first. And he took the pistol from me, and I gave him the magazine. I said, keep this because you might need it. And he's like, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. He's an Italian guy. He speaks perfect English, but he was an Italian guy and from Milan. And it turned out that these three guys were like bank robbers and shit like that. And like they were also bad guys on the run,
It was while he was staying with his Italian friends that he would meet his next employer.
And I don't want to say his name because anybody can find out this information that wants to look. But a man came in who owned a smuggling operation. But I don't like to talk about. I don't want to, mention people that I've killed because this man I did end up killing later. And he had a smuggling operation in which that Asian people, primarily from China, would pay money to be smuggled into the United States. And they came in on container ships, in a container. After the container ship passed through the Panama Canal, they'd be smuggled off of the ship and up the Caribbean coast. They would go to Jamaica, from Jamaica on to, I don't know, Texas, Florida, Alabama, somewhere there. So through the Gulf of Mexico. So I picked up a job running the leg from Bocas del Toro, where they were housed in Bocas del Toro. I picked up the leg from Bocas del Toro to Jamaica.
And that's all we've got time for. But coming up in our next episode, Wild Bill gets himself involved in the smuggling business. And this is where he would have to kill for the first time. He says, in self-defense.
So he comes back and tries to tackle me, and I moved to step out of the way, but I slipped, and the deck was wet, and I slipped, and I fell back on my back, and he fell on top of me.
If you want to find out more about the man who was once Central America's most infamous hitman and now a serving Christian minister in a Panamanian prison, Bill has written a book about his experiences inside Central America's prison system, the details of which are in the show notes of this episode.
I'm a wanderer of the soul. Before the end, I plan to be whole. But I know I'll lose myself along the way. What's gone is gone. What's past is past. Let me leave.